The game itself was a joke. Fog rolled out ahead of a massive rainfall that ended things after only 7 innings. There were 2 out in that 7th inning with runners on 2nd and 3rd, and that's when Kelly Gruber stepped up, and the rest is a bit foggy. Hi, I'm Chris May, writer, producer, and host of This Day in Weather History, a podcast now in its 2nd year from the Weather Network in Canada. This story reads like one of my old Hardy Boys novels, one that I probably would have been reading after that game was over back in 1986. It would have been called The Night the Ball Disappeared. This Day in Weather History. So there I was. It was on the 12th of this month, back in 1986. I was a nerdy baseball nut and knew nothing of atmospheric science at this point in my very young life. Yet this was a weather event that I watched on television unfold right before my very eyes. I had settled in for a divisional battle between 2 American League East rivals who already had developed a very testy relationship, and this game did not help that at all. Not one bit. Let's go back to my intro and pick things up from when third base phenom Kelly Gruber stepped into the batter's box with 2 runners on. He would hit a ridiculous 3-run inside the park home run. On any other day, it was considered a routine lazy fly ball to Pat Sheridan in right center field, and it should have been the 3rd out. But on this day, it was not. I think it would actually be a bit of fun and probably add to the comedy of errors if I first explained to you the setup for what transpired next. Trust me, when I start here and then pick up the game afterwards, it will become hilariously clear. So, here is what happened. This was a first-rate weather freak show, and one of the prime reasons why that $570 million was spent on the Sky Dome that would debut 3 years later. Let's first take a refresher course on what fog is, because it was public enemy number 1 on this night. You need the surface layer of atmosphere supersaturated with dew points meeting the value of the actual temperature. The dew point is the temperature at which the air becomes 100% saturated. This causes air, which is a gaseous state, to condense into water droplets, which is in a liquid state, likely forming a low-level cloud, which is our fog. But fog needs a special environment in which to stay around. It is typically found in calm or low-wind environments, which we saw here, specifically by the afternoon and evening hours. Game time was 7:05 p.m. in an open-air stadium situated right along the shores of a freshwater lake, so the setting was perfect. But how were the conditions that evening? Let's take a look. We had increased moisture along with the cooling of air, which is typically needed for the formation of fog. On June 12, 1986, it was a terrible day from the start. The morning opened with showers and temperatures were in the mid-teens. Then, as the relative humidity rose into the afternoon, the fog started in and out. It could not gather any density yet because of the drizzle in the showers. But by 3 p.m., the precip eased and fog took over. By first pitch at 7:05 p.m., the humidity was at 97%. That's soaking wet. The wind had died to a very weak, only 6 kilometers per hour, and this gave the fog all it needed to settle in and take over. At 8 p.m., the wind clocked in at exactly 0 kilometers per hour. The humidity was now at 99%, and visibility was now less than half a kilometer, and this is where things got really bad on the field. Toronto took a 2-0 lead in the first inning. With 2 outs, Jesse Barfield drove an 0-2 pitch into the left field bleachers for his 16th homer. Kelly Gruber followed with a single, and with the fog rolling in off Lake Ontario, catcher at the time Buck Martinez punched a liner to right center. Right fielder Kirk Gibson was unable to spot the ball, and it rolled all the way to the wall for a run-scoring double. Then between 9 p.m. and 10 p.m., it got worse. Humidity was still at a very uncomfortable 97-98%. The winds again died to 0 kilometers per hour, and that allowed for the fog to sit like pea soup over this ball game, causing visibility to now disappear. And I mean that. The official records read exactly 0 kilometers of visibility. Now, no one could see anything, and that is when it happened. The Toronto Blue Jays center fielder Lloyd Moseby drew a leadoff walk and one out later scored on designated hitter Cliff Johnson's double. With 2 out, first baseman Willie Upshaw walked, and that's when third baseman Kelly Gruber lifted a lazy routine fly ball into the fog-soaked sky. The Tigers' outfielders couldn't see anything. The ball disappeared into a pea soup thick fog deck and literally bounced behind a bewildered Pat Sheridan. The ball sat unattended, and unseen at the base of the wall while the gigantic Cliff Johnson scored. If you remember Cliff Johnson, he was a mammoth man. Behind him was Willie Upshaw, so those two crossed the plate, and then hilariously, around came Kelly Gruber for the most ridiculous and improbable inside-the-park homer, giving the Blue Jays 9-0 win at that game on this day in weather history. Tomorrow is June 13th, and I'm going back to the year 2020 in Alberta, when they suffered what is recorded as the 4th costliest natural disaster in the history of Canada. How? Why? What? It's all tomorrow on This Day in Weather History with me, your host, Chris May.